Arthropods have achieved the greatest animal diversity on Earth, with insects by far the most numerous. Estimates of species vary, and possibly millions more remain to be discovered. Most marine arthropods are crustaceans, such as crabs, shrimp, and barnacles. Crustaceans, including both adults and larval stages, form most of the ocean's zooplankton, the community of tiny, drifting life forms that support all oceanic food chains. Like land arthropods, all marine forms have an external skeleton, segmented body, and jointed appendages. These features permit some, such as robber crabs, to live on land, as well as in water. Fully marine insects are rare, but some live on seashores and coasts. Although arthropods may look very different from one another, they all have an external skeleton, exoskeleton, which is either thin and flexible or rigid and toughened by deposits of calcium carbonate. The body is segmented and has a variable number of jointed appendages. Some are used for walking and swimming, while others are modified into claws and antennae or adapted for feeding. Muscles are attached across the joints to facilitate movement. Most of the body cavity is hollow. This space, called the hemicole, contains the internal organs and a fluid hemolymph that is the equivalent to vertebrate blood. This is pumped around the body by the heart in an open circulatory system. Most marine forms use gills for respiration and have well-developed sense organs. Among crustaceans, feeding is extremely varied. Many crabs are scavengers that feed on dead and decaying organic matter. They are therefore vital in helping to recycle nutrients. Others are hunters and have robust claws to stun, mantis shrimp, or crush, lobsters, their prey before tearing it apart and consuming it. Many small planktonic crustaceans, such as copepods, are filter feeders that make effective use of various appendages, including long antennae, to create water currents that waft food particles toward their mouths. Barnacles, which are attached to rocks and unable to move, feed in a similar way, using their limbs to collect plankton. A few crustaceans are parasitic, some isopods, copepods, and the barnacle Sacculina, and obtain all their nourishment from their host. The shoreline is an ideal place for insects, such as kelp flies, that feed by releasing enzymes onto rotting seaweed and then taking in the resultant digested material. Farther inland, among the dunes, there is more vegetation, so spiders and pollen and nectar-feeding insects start to appear. Crustaceans can only develop and grow by molting and replacing their exoskeleton with a larger one. The molting process, called ectasis, is controlled by hormones and occurs repeatedly during adult life. The exoskeleton is produced from the layer of shells situated immediately below it. Before a molt starts, the exoskeleton detaches from this cell layer and the space in between fills with molting fluid. Enzymes within this fluid weaken the exoskeleton so that it eventually splits at the weakest point, often somewhere along the back. The new exoskeleton is soft and wrinkled, so it needs to expand and then harden. Marine arthropods absorb water rapidly after molting to expand their new protective covering. Molting individuals are vulnerable until their exoskeleton hardens, so they often remain hidden for hours or days. All marine arthropods are free living for at least part of their lives. Some, such as crabs, have planktonic larvae that sink to the sea floor and become bottom-living, or benthic, as they mature. Crabs and their relatives tend to live alone unless seeking a partner to breed with, and may defend territory. Others, such as krill and copepods, live in vast swarms, traveling hundreds of yards up and down the water column each day to feed. Adult barnacles remain anchored to one spot, that is, they are sessile, often setting large aggregations on rocky shores where living conditions are most favorable. Deep-sea arthropod species are not well known, but many have cryptic red or black coloration to make themselves invisible, while others, such as krill, have light organs and exhibit bioluminescence. A few arthropods live in close association with other species. Sometimes both partners benefit from a relationship, mutualism, sometimes only one has an advantage, commensalism, and sometimes one gains at some cost to the other, parasitism. In most crustaceans, the sexes are separate, fertilization is often internal, and the eggs must be laid in water. Some females store sperm and then let it flow over their eggs as they release them. Others protect their eggs by carrying around, and keep them healthy by continually wafting water over them. On hatching, the larvae join the zooplankton, and pass through various stages before maturing into adults. Barnacles are both male and female, hermaphroditic, but only function as one sex at a time. The male has a long, extendable penis and mates with all neighboring females within reach. In horseshoe crabs, fertilization occurs externally, males and females pair up, the males fertilize the eggs as the females lay them in the sand, and then both sexes abandon them. Unlike most sea spiders, which have a leg span of less than 1 in, 2.5 centimeters. The giant sea spider, typical of other polar species, has a huge leg span of about 10 in, 25 centimeters. It has a large proboscis through which it sucks its food, but its body is so small that the sex organs and parts of its digestive system are situated in the tops of the legs. Sea spiders are somewhat unusual among arthropods in that some exhibit parental care, the males having a modified pair of legs to carry the eggs until they hatch. Despite its name, the American horseshoe crab is more closely related to spiders than to crabs. It is mainly active at night and scavenges anything it can find, including small worms, bivalves, and algae. Adults have few predators. The horseshoe-shaped, greenish-brown shell, or carapace, provides effective protection. It has 6 pairs of thoracic appendages. The first pair, called chelicerae, is used for feeding. The other 5 are for walking and for grasping and tearing food. 5 pairs of flattened abdominal appendages are used for swimming and scuttling along the bottom, and also carry page-like book gills, through which oxygen is absorbed. Its long, rigid tail is used for steering and for righting itself. Hinged to the body, it can act as a lever. The reproductive cycle is closely linked to spring high tides, when adults gather in large numbers on sandy beaches to breed. Females lay up to 80,000 eggs in a depression near the high tide mark, providing a vital food source for birds and other marine creatures. The eggs are laid in batches, mostly when the moon is in its fill or new phases. The eggs hatch into tailless trilobite larvae, so called because they look a bit like fossil trilobites. Carried down the shore at high tide, the larvae swim around actively but also burrow into the sediment for safety. After a few days, they molt and become juveniles. So called because of its resemblance to a gooseneck and head, the gooseneck barnacle forms dense colonies in crevices on rocky shores with strong waves. Barnacles anchor themselves to rocks by a tough, flexible stalk, peduncle, which also contains the gonads. This is actually their head end. Once the barnacle has attached itself to an object, it secretes a series of pale plates at the end of its stalk, forming a shell around its feather-like legs, which comb through the water for food. The legs face away from the sea, enabling the barnacle to feed by filtering out particles of detritus from returning tidal water as it funnels past them through cracks in the rocks. These barnacles become sexually mature at about 5 years of age and may live for up to 20 years. The larval stage is free living but depends on sea currents for its transport and survival. Colonies of gooseneck barnacle are susceptible to the damaging effects of oil pollution, and they recover only slowly from disturbance. All oceans contain krill, small, shrimp-like, planktonic crustaceans that live in open waters. Antarctic krill live in vast numbers in the subantarctic waters of the Southern Ocean, where they form a vital link in the food chain, being eaten in vast quantities by baleen whales, seals, and various fish. Krill rise to the surface at night to feed on phytoplankton, algae, and diatoms. For safety, they sink to greater depths during the day. The feathery appearance of this species is due to its gills, which, unusually, are carried outside the carapace. Their filamentous structure increases the surface area available for gaseous exchange. Antarctic krill also have large light organs, called photophores. The light is thought to help them group together. They spawn in spring, during which females may release several broods of up to 8,000 eggs. In life, the European lobster is brown or bluish. It only turns the familiar red when it is cooked. Individuals weigh up to 11 pounds, 5 kilograms. It has large, differently sized claws. The smaller one has sharper edges and is used for cutting prey, while the larger one is used for crushing. The European lobster lives in holes and crevices on the seabed. The European lobster is commercially important and in danger of overexploitation because it matures slowly, and is such a valuable commodity. Resting in the cool of its burrow during the day, the fast-moving ghost crab emerges at twilight to hunt. It will eat anything it can find, including other crabs, and also scavenges whatever was brought in by the last tide. During the mating season, male ghost crabs defend their burrows, but they rarely fight, any disputes being settled by ritualistic displays. Their burrows can be over 330 feet, 100 meters, from the sea and over 3 feet, 1 meter, deep. Not only is the giant Japanese spider crab the largest of all crabs, with a leg span of up to 13 feet, 4 meters, and weighing 35 to 44 pounds, 16 to 20 kilograms, it may also be the longest living, estimated to live for up to 100 years. Living in the deep, cold waters around Japan, it moves slowly across the ocean floor on its spider-like legs, scavenging for food.